Welcome to the Remodeler Success Podcast, a show created to inspire kitchen and bath industry professionals to achieve optimal success in their remodeling business. Your host, Dennis Oz, is the author of the book, Remodel Your Digital Marketing, an integrated online marketing guide for kitchen and bath remodelers. He's also the founder of RTA Marketing, a pioneer digital marketing agency for the remodeling industry. On each episode, Dennis will sit down with industry leaders to talk about their processes, the lessons they learned, and how to find success in remodeling.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Remodeler Success Podcast, where we feature the leaders who are solving real problems in the remodeling world and building businesses that stand out. So why I'm so excited today is today's guest brings over decades of experience across sales and design and also project management. And she has worked with nationally recognized brands. They also led high performing teams and now runs a Pittsburgh based remodeling company that's earned a reputation for taking the jobs that other contractors says can't be done. So we're going to talk about this project still. It's a really interesting part of this session today. And with all this practical, creative, and fully hands-on experience, we will be talking about like client relationship and project execution today. Please welcome to the show, Elizabeth Sable.
Thank you,
Elizabeth,
everyone. Thank you for having me.
Oh, great. Elizabeth, before diving into the questions, could you please introduce yourself a little bit to our listeners here?
Sure. So my name's Elizabeth Sable. I own Action Builders, which is a design build firm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We do only residential projects. My schooling is I'm an interior designer by schooling. But through the years, I've definitely honed my sales, my project management. I love residential design. I love working directly with the people that are impacted by my design. And I think that people that enjoy what they do are the most successful. And so I'm just happy to say that I enjoy what I do.
Great. This is perfect. When we start asking questions to our guest speakers here, we always try to focus a little more on the early career stages in the beginning. So I know that you have worn so many hats in your career. It could be sales and project management to owning to Action Builders right now, living in Pittsburgh. So I'm sure that you have some core lessons from your early career, early roles that also still guide how you run your business today. Could you please talk about these experiences?
Sure. That's actually one of the phrases that I say to people is, so when I was in college, I worked at a pizza shop. And I've joked that everything I've learned in life, I've learned at the pizza shop, which isn't totally true. I've learned a lot of other things in life, but the pizza shop taught me like the basics of like customer management, customer happiness, working with the general public. But also I had a really great mentor in the owner. And so he taught me some really great management skills. And he also, basic things like when you're on the phone with someone, make sure they can hear your smile. And so I've learned, that was my like college days. After that, though, I dabbled in some real estate, which I do think is useful in my career with Action Builders now, just understanding a residential real estate market. So I sold real estate for a while. I did hotel design and project management for the larger chain hotels. So I worked for a company in Pittsburgh that did we would do the design and the supply of basically everything you see in a Hampton Inn, Holiday Inn, those chain properties, and really learned like the craziness of like a 10,000 things go in different directions with that position, and also some really intense customers because you had these hotel owners that had millions of dollars on the line and they were very emotionally charged for obvious reasons. And so that I was really young when I was in that position, but I was dealing directly with the owners in a project management role. And I loved it, but it was definitely stressful. But I truly think it prepared you for the emotions that you see with the homeowner during the remodeling process, especially the more intense remodeling projects that Action Builders does. And then I dabbled in some sales of wall covering and fabrics for a couple of years. And then I joined Action Builders in 2012.
This is amazing for Action Builders. I would like to talk a little more because just like I mentioned in the introduction, there are some challenging projects that other companies turn down. Maybe say, oh, we can do this. Just want to talk about these complex projects that you have completed, maybe the most recent ones. And how do you or your team really navigate these hurdles? Could you please give us some of your recent projects that you completed?
Sure. So I'll just give some general examples of some challenges that we've faced. So I think structurally is the biggest thing where Action Builders excels in that, when a lot of our projects are addition projects or large interior renovation projects. And in those projects, people want to move walls around. They want to move, add space, whatever. And you can do that very well and you can do that very poorly. And so I think that Action Builders excels in the design aspect of those addition spaces with the structure. So, for example, we're not always just taking a window and making it a doorway, and then suddenly there's an addition. We're really being thoughtful to how that addition interacts with the existing floor plan and how it flows with the house. And so I think that like design of the structure is really where Action Builders excels on complicated projects. We don't hesitate to use steel in our projects for structural support. I remember a kitchen project years ago, the very first consultation. I walked into the project, great, like two-story colonial house with an addition from a previous owner off the back. And I walk into their kitchen and they had a post right in the middle of their island. And I just looked at it immediately and said, we're getting rid of that. And, we put a big steel beam in the middle and really opened up their space to what it truly should have been to begin with. So it's the structure that we excel at. Some current challenging projects. I think when you say challenging project, I think there's kind of a challenge of the design and then there's the challenge of construction. So one of the projects I always jokingly talk about too is I had a project, how beautiful ranch house. They had a previous addition off the back that you had to walk through rooms to get to rooms to get to rooms. And their backyard was awesome. They had a pool, a basketball court, like everything. So they didn't want to move. And figuring out the layout of that house was really hard to figure like, to make it work for what they wanted. And it, I'm sure you get this, like it got into my design brain a little bit. And I was thinking about it, driving, thinking about it. And I was in the shower one day and I'm like, I think I got it. And so I actually took some shaving cream, put it on the wall and kind of like sketched out what I was thinking. And I'm like, that will work. And we actually did it. It's one of my favorite projects to date. And then we have a very challenging project going on right now in Lawrenceville, which is in the city of Pittsburgh. Very tight quarters, pretty complicated excavation with like houses on top of houses and cars and all of that. And we are like hopefully scheduling the footer inspection next week. So we're getting there, but that's definitely as far as construction. There's challenges in that aspect too.
Yeah, well, you're talking about design and construction. Actually, this is going to be my next question because, yeah, I'm sure that there are different challenges on design and different challenges on construction. But interestingly, your resume just really spans both these two things, like design and construction, and you just have those two different techniques and also aspects in the same melting pot. I'm sure these dual expertise really influenced you and especially influenced your approach to project planning and also execution. How did it happen?
Honestly, just boots on the ground experience. So I took ownership of Action Builders in 2023, but before that, I worked hand in hand with the previous owner, and he taught me a ton. And so, by just sitting in a truck with him all the time, following him around a job site, he taught me how to be a pain in the butt and to make sure that everything was perfect and keep a project moving. But all that where I think the construction knowledge helps my design is that I can basically design to the construction, where I think sometimes a complaint is that, designers, maybe sometimes design things that can't always be built. And I do see this a lot. I have people that come to me with architectural plans that they've spent a lot of money on, but they've never put a price to that project. And so when I'm designing and pricing at the same time, it's a much more efficient process. And I can say to them very quickly, hey, we can do that, but it's going to be pretty complicated and be a big chunk of your budget. Do you really want to allocate it to that? And so I think just like allocating that budget and making the design build process a more seamless approach, that construction knowledge has definitely helped my design abilities.
Wow, this is great. And yeah, also just like you mentioned, Elizabeth, design and build projects, sometimes it's really sometimes long, sometimes complex, and some projects are just like you said. There are different challenges on the design and construction part. And when you look at those kind of challenges on the client communication and the construction delivery, some of the strategies I believe that you really help you to maintain this strong homeowner trust during this process. What are those strategies?
I think knowing that you're not like, creating an emotional bond and an emotional relationship with that homeowner that you both trust each other. Because the projects where you don't trust each other, that's a lot harder because you're just butting heads. So if you can build a good relationship where you're working together and trusting each other, I think that that's good. That kind of goes the whole way through. And two words that I use, I don't work with the homeowners a lot directly one-on-one today, but I mentor my team. And the two words that I use all the time with them are education and communication. Because if you can educate a customer and you can communicate with a customer, like that's what they need to be comfortable through a renovation and understand what's going on. Because you're not always coming to them with good news. And like you're just a messenger sometimes. I mean, some remodeling, it's not new construction. It is what it is. And so if you have that good relationship, you've communicated with them well all the way. When you do have to have those hard conversations, it's a conversation, it's not an argument. And so I've tried to really hone that with my approach and train my team accordingly.
Wow. I also talk a little more about team management, but just want to dive a little more in this education. Well, when I learned that one of the research of National Kitchen and Bath Association says 1 out of 10, almost 10% of every homeowner really jumps out as soon as they hear the pricing of the project because what they're expecting before even getting
Especially
started.
nowadays.
So when you look at this problem, there should be some people, of course, they will be expecting a little less, but there will be some people, of course, they're available for like really telling them what's really needed to complete
Mhm.
the project and then explaining them what look those are the things that is needed and they're more convincible, right? You can convince these people. How do you do this? I mean, just want to ask you, if you just see someone, if the qualified project, let's say, and the homeowner is just really qualified but they're not really qualified by the mindset, how do you just adjust their mindset, bring them back to the real world and talk about the real numbers? Is that a big challenge?
Daily challenge, especially because things are so expensive now. Like we're actually building an addition coming up in August, and it's almost identical to an addition that we built back in 2015. And I compared the numbers, and it was crazy how the prices has changed. But I'll go back to that education. So you have to just educate the homeowner on what they're asking for, because homeowners a lot of times don't even realize when they're saying, "Oh, I want this, I want that, I want that." Like they have no concept. And so that just comes back to that education of them and trying to teach them. Um, and I think it's a process. I say it's a questions the whole way through, it's a conversation the whole way through. And as far as pricing goes, the way I approach it is, and the way I try to educate people is I literally will hold my hands up like this when I say it, but I'll use a funnel approach. And so I say, like, when we're having our first conversations, we're like up at the top of that funnel and we're really broad numbers, I'm guessing. And I try to really emphasize that to them, that my goal is to get them a ballpark range for a project that they can then say, yes, this project makes sense to continue with, or whoa, no way. But if I can give them that ballpark range, and then we actually have a design process that we go through before they can commit to a construction contract. But through that design process, I'll tell them, hey, we're narrowing down the options. And so maybe the first set of drawings I'll present to them, and I'll still give them a range, but it's still maybe a lower range. So my first range would have been $100,000 range, and my second set with that, when I have an idea, is a $50,000 range. And so it's just educating them. And then very commonly when we're getting closer to narrowing the design down, homeowners will just start adding things all of a sudden. And they'll be like, well, while we're at it, let's do our hall bathroom and let's do the flooring. And they very commonly are like, whoa, we didn't realize we were adding $50,000. And so again, just back to that education and explaining to them what they're adding, and almost gauging them before you go through all of the legwork to price everything, gauging, hey, I think we're adding, a big chunk here. Is that okay? Before you go through that legwork. But it always comes back, education, communication, I'm telling you.
very, very important. And I'm sure that all our listeners, or even people that if they're watching what you shared today, I'm sure they're getting a great value out of that. And folks, you see, when you have these questions, or if you're just thinking about, if I make a mistake, if I do this, here you're hearing from the direct source where someone really walked these roads and also sharing all the scars on their faces and all these things that they experienced in the past. So I'm sure all our listeners, whoever tuned in today, is finding as valuable as I found it. So I'm sure that you. Thanks so much for sharing all this information, Elizabeth. But we'll continue because I would like to talk a little more about the team management, because leading the team, Elizabeth, is one of the most challenging things when the things just started to get really kind of scaled from scratch. Well, if you are like a, one man show, you don't need like maybe a large team, of course, that you will get more and more projects, and you have to create your team. And most of our listeners are in that, I would say, phase, and they are struggling to find and hiring the right people and keeping the reliable talent, because hiring is one thing and keeping them is another thing.
Well, there, yeah.
Sally, how have you built the team really is capable of taking on these high difficult projects?
Sure. So I almost have two separate teams. I have more of the design team and then the construction team. When I took ownership of Action Builders in 2023, the construction team, the core group of them, they're still with me today. They're fantastic guys. They've been with Action Builders for a while. And so they've been huge in helping me build the construction team to where it is today. And that like they're working with these guys day to day. So they're the morale, etc. The inside team I've actually completely overhauled, and I have an 11 and a 13-year-old child, girl and a boy. And I've always said that parenting was the hardest thing I've ever done until I tried to put a team together and get a team to work together. And that is by far the hardest thing I've ever done, is getting a team to work together. Hiring, I think patience is my advice on that. Don't just hire to hire as fast as possible. The people that I've waited for and just kind of like sat on for a little bit, like the right person does eventually come around. So patience, I think, is really important. And I will say that, what is the phrase? Is it hire slow, fire fast? It's true. The people that I've like hovered on and not, gotten rid of quickly, I regretted. Because usually pretty quickly, if they're a good fit with the team, if they're a good fit for the position. But really vetting them through that hiring process, I think, is important, and really considering their personality through that process and how it's going to interact with the rest of your team. Because I have seen, we've had one team member that was just causing a chaos, and it goes through the whole team. But then as soon as you have a good team that's working together, which I'm really happy to say I have right now. I have a really great team right now. It's so refreshing. It makes my job a lot easier on the day to day.
Great. This is perfect. And again, yeah, keeping the talent is also hiring the talent. Those are all real world challenges. And great to hear your golden nuggets here. Wow.
And keeping the talent, I think, is actually, I didn't necessarily touch on that, so I hope you don't mind me continuing. But keeping the talent is actually just as hard, because this is an emotional business, and it's a tough business. It's very, residential remodeling is not a walk in the park. And so I really try to respect my employees and respect them for their expertise, because I've said this to my entire team, like not a single one of us could do the entire thing ourselves. Like we all need each other. But I also think I give my team a really nice work-life balance. I really set expectations. Honestly, at the first interviews that I have with people, I don't want to babysit you. I don't want to call you and tell you to do your job. Because I think that if you're hiring people that are adults and competent, and then they love their job too, you have a really winning combination there. So I really try to give them the good work-life balance and the happiness that they're looking for out of their careers as well.
Amazing. Thanks so much. I'm sure that you always say, if it done 80% by a team member, consider it done for 100%, because it's been done for someone else. I know it's not like, if you do it, you'll do it 100%. But if someone else is doing 80%, that'll be enough, folks. So we have talked about this a lot of times in this show. So let's not overkill it, right? Right, Elizabeth? If you overkill it, the team management will be a really big struggle as just like us managers. Is that correct?
I 100% agree with that, and that's funny that you say that 80% because I literally just emailed that to my construction manager about a week ago because he's trying to do 100%, and I'm like, "Gotta do 80%."
Great. Thanks so much. Well, let's take the conversation to the marketing right now. I know residential remodeling services today is marketing those services today is a lot more than just like word of mouth or like yard signs. It's just some sort of like different maybe approaches to the marketing, even online and offline, based on your company's strategy. How have you adapted all these kind of different approach, and what's the most working channel for you right now for action builders right now today when you look at your digital marketing?
Sure. Digital marketing, honestly, our website is, I would say, like the number one. But then from a social media standpoint, we do well on Facebook. I actually love LinkedIn though, personally, because I think that it gives you access to a lot of professionals in your marketplace. So I constantly am posting on LinkedIn quite a bit. But the website, I think, just having a really strong SEO and um, pittsburgheditions.com. I've had this with my marketing company probably since about 2015, and the company just has done a really, really good job on the SEO. So I think that's important. But I'll go back to that education and communication again is like I use my approach to the marketing is like you got to educate people and then people will come to you.
Yeah, cool. And here I also talk about a little more AI. What would be some of your, I would say, most used cases of AI today? How you use AI, even sometimes in operation, not necessarily in marketing, but sometimes in operation. One great example that we have got in a show, like maybe a couple of episodes ago, is our speakers told us that they record everything. Of course, they get the consent from the client. You like record this conversation that when they make the home visit, that they record everything and then come back and transcribe it and then create their quote based on their struggles because they are saying that we want this and that. So AI understands this necessities and then builds the custom quote based on what they said. So this is a pretty good example and use cases of AI that I heard in this show. But do you use custom GPTs or utilize Chat GPT, or what's your adoption? How do you handle AI in your company?
So that's funny that you asked that because my 13-year-old was actually making fun of me about 4 months ago that I still Google things. She's like, "You're not supposed to Google, you use Chat GPT." And so she kind of started me on it. But since then, I love it, obviously. I have used it for administrative tasks, just little things like I needed to rewrite my warranty. So, Chat GPT helped me out and I fixed it accordingly. I needed a punch list process for the team. Chat GPT helped me out at that. But the most interesting use of Chat GPT that I've seen recently, and I've actually had two clients. So all the leads come through on our website and they can upload images and documents and things for us. I've had two clients, they include an image that Chat GPT has created of the addition that they want on their house. And I'm like so impressed with that because it just makes our conversations so much easier. And I actually gave it a try myself. We are doing a second story addition on a ranch home, and so I uploaded the before picture of the ranch home and I described I said, add a second story. It took a couple prompts, but I did get it pretty close. And I thought that was just a great use. Like the rendering, it was crazy how well it was, how quickly it did it.
I think Elizabeth is going to evolve, just like you said.
Yeah.
It was your little one was just we you to go there and ask. But what we are seeing is just like all these years in marketing is right now the search is just changing a little bit. I would say
Yeah.
are putting on Google search right now, they are putting on Chat GPT. Search is changing. Search is transforming something more like a search bar to a like question and answer type. And what I found really interesting is, Elizabeth, right now, ChatGPT is just like referring companies to the homeowners when they make searches. Who is the best remodeling company in Pittsburgh, for example? Like, right now, it uses Google's infrastructure and everything. If you have a good SEO, it's going to bring you a better GEO. And the term is GEO here, generative engine optimization. And it's
Taught me something today because I did not know that.
yeah, I would like to mention that because
Yeah.
we are living and breathing marketing almost every day, and we are learning so many different things along the way. And GEO is just like you mentioned, better SEO that you said, we are really good at SEO. This is the best way to be right now is to have a better GEO. Well, future, we never know. We never know future. Maybe all these massive data just being managed by Google will mean less important for OpenAI. And maybe
Who knows?
it will start different things. We're just trying to read and evaluate the future, but this we never really know. That's why, just like you said, it's always better to keep yourself like really connected to what's new today. And you're using it through a great way. And thank you so much for sharing that as well.
Yeah,
Because
it's really, I was impressed when they first started sending them to me that way.
with all our listeners, folks, just go to ChatGPT or Google's Gemini will do the same work and just ask this question: who is the best remodeling company? Or if you're not remodeling, maybe you're just selling kitchen cabinets, maybe or components. Who's the best? Who has the biggest showroom in the area? Just try to play with the system. You will see so many interesting things
I
that
mean,
work
thank
for
you,
that.
like, thank you, Dennis, because I seriously had not even ever thought of doing that, and I'm gonna definitely do that this afternoon, is kind of play around with that and figure out.
Another you get speakers of here. We also talk about that, Elizabeth. You always like would like to highlight
Yeah.
these kind of moments today, just like you share. I would like to also highlight some of the big moments from the previous sessions. They said while she have the ChatGPT's recommendation, you have AI on your side screening you. You it's sort of like an old customer like
Yourself.
amazing. So it's just like Elizabeth shared today, folks. It's always better to keep yourself aligned and engaged with the new technology.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're tuning into the show, we have different guests here with different background. Today, Elizabeth here, she's talking about all these design and construction side. Of course, marketing is a big part of thing, just like Elizabeth shared, and your website is another thing that you have to look at. I believe Elizabeth, website is the most fundamental thing that they have to look at when they're marketing. Is that right? Or do you have anything else that you would like to share about marketing? Because I believe that we passed marketing questions really fast. Just want to go back there.
Yeah.
Do you think that we have anything else other than the website that we have to
I
focus
I
on?
love the marketing aspect of it. I've added videos to my, like, I think any investment you put into your digital content is 100% worth it. So, that's something I started last year, is really incorporating videos. And so I have a videographer nearby, that does drone footage. So he'll stop by my projects kind of like midway, and get me a couple different shots and then put a nice video together at the end. He's done final drone shots. So I think the video is huge, but I'll go back to the education again. I've used the video for that education portion, because so many people ask me the same question. You go into these initial consultations and it's the same question over and over again. And so I'm trying to educate people almost ahead of time. And I think that, for your listeners, I think showing that expertise online really, it makes it so much easier when you walk in that front door. They respect you, because people are really doing their research ahead of time. They're not just opening the phone book anymore and looking at, the top contractor. They're spending, at least in the projects that we're doing too, the bigger remodeling projects, people are researching for years. And so really adding that educational content, I think, is great, along with obviously the work that you're doing.
This is amazing. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all these, your expertise and your experiences today. I believe that pretty much sums up a great episode today, but I have a very last question before you
Yeah,
go. I don't want to let you, I have more questions for you.
go for it.
Elizabeth, going back to your trial and error approach that most of the remodelers face at some period of their entrepreneurship journey, let's talk about someone who's just starting in the industry and your piece of advice that you wish you had when you just began, like in the early beginnings that you have today, but you said your I wish moments. So something that also could really save our listeners years of trial and error. What are your I wish moments?
I think my biggest I wish or advice would be, at the pizza shop, I learned that the customer's always right. If a customer's calling and they got a wrong pizza, make it a new one and send them a pizza. They're right. When I started in residential construction, I quickly learned that the customer is not always right. And so I think that's my advice for people starting out is, don't jump all the time for the customer. Go back to that education and educate them on why they might not be correct, or, why what they're saying might not be the best solution for their house or their project. And I think that, when we're starting out, and I was there too, like you want to impress and you want to appease people, but I think you actually gain people's respect more when you tell them kind of politely, no, I don't agree with that, but here's what I'm suggesting instead, and not always assuming that customer's right.
Well, that was one of the best answers and content that we have ever seen in this show. Because sometimes I'm asking, is this always right? And that was one of the best explanations. So I'm even seeing after the show, I'm sure that we're gonna label it like this customer only. The thing so that already.
Definitely.
Well, Elizabeth, thanks so much for sharing all
It's
these.
been a pleasure.
Well, one last thing, if someone has a follow-up question, sometimes it happens. They would like to kind of get back and just ask you a couple of maybe follow-up questions. Is that the best way to maybe going to your website, or there will be thousands of people don't share their personal number here because
I'll get called. The website is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. We have a web form on there, and it's for projects and things, but I'm the one that gets all of the web forms. So pittsburgheditions.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, and that you can message me through there. But I'm happy, anybody that's interested, I'm happy to share anything I can.
perfect. And folks, I believe that you had a really amazing episode with Elizabeth Sable today, and that was another great episode of Remodeler Success Podcast. We're gonna see you next time. Goodbye.
If you would like to generate more leads, please visit rtamarketing.com to get a copy of the book, Remodel Your Digital Marketing, an integrated online marketing guide for kitchen and bath remodelers. This has been another episode of the Remodeler Success Podcast. Thanks for listening.